I have been so excited to film this video all week because today we're going to get some tailored book recommendations from a professional bibliologist, a professional book recommender. I've seen people all over YouTube, all over BookTube filming these videos. I've seen Jack Edwards do it, Hannah Witten do it, and so many others as well. And I'm anything if not a follower of the crowd. And this just sounds like such a fun idea, doesn't it? Like you basically give a complete stranger your lists of likes and dislikes, what you look for in a book, what you hate in a book, and they will come back with some fun recommendations. What a great video idea. We're going to go through the entire process beginning to end. We're going to fill out the form together. We're going to wait for the email to come in that the recommendations have been made. We are going to read the books together and we can judge at the end whether or not this service is worth it. Right, so the website we're using today for these professional book recommendations is called mytbr.co. TBR in this instance stands for Tailored Book Recommendations. I think that's really clever. TBR, to be read, Tailored Book Recommendations, genius. And this is what the website looks like. How it works. In a book lover's life, there's nothing as magical as a perfect, surprising recommendation from somebody who just gets you. But finding those people can be tough. That's where TBR comes in. So basically it has a step-by-step instruction how to do this. Number 1, tell us about your reading habits and what you're looking for, then select the plan that best suits your reading lifestyle. Choose from the hardcover plan or the recommendations only plan. Now we are going to be doing the recommendations only plan today because this is a service that is set in the USA. So if you're in the USA and you want to do this, they will literally send out the books that they recommend to you. We'll go through pricing in a second, but if you're anywhere else in the world, they will just recommend the books and then you can go out and source them for yourself, which I think I would do either way, to be honest. Then their expert bibliologists call on decades of reading to select 3 books just for you. Reginald the carrier pigeon then delivers your tailored recommendations with a personal note from a bibliologist, that is a hard word to say, bibliologist, and you get your read on. I'm not really sure where the pigeons come into this, but it's part of their branding. So how much does TBR cost? The recommendations only level, which is where you receive recommendations by email, is $18 per quarter or $60 billed annually. I'm just going to do the flat rate of $18, which is, let me see how many pounds that is. That is £14 here in the UK. Generally, would I spend £14 to do this just off the bat? Probably not, but this is for a video and it's part of my job, so I'm going to do it. And if the service is good and I genuinely like the books they recommend, would I spend £14 again in future? Maybe, we'll see. For my American viewers, the paperback level, which is where you receive 3 paperbacks in the mail, is $69.50 and $5.50 shipping per quarter, or $278 annually with free shipping. That sounds very expensive. Very expensive. And the hardcover level, which is where you receive 3 new hardcovers in the mail, which is per quarter, so you receive, I can do maths, I swear I can, 12 books per year. And that's $368 annually or $92 per quarter. Now I know books are very expensive over in the USA. I'm not entirely sure they're that expensive, but you are paying for the recommendations as well as the books. I don't know. How long will it take to get my recommendations? They will be sent by email within 2 weeks of sign up. So we're in this for the long haul. The books will be shipped within 4 weeks. Again, that's not relevant to me. What happens if I'm recommended a book that I've already read? So TBR recommendations are non-returnable and non-refundable. But if you do have a Goodreads profile or other reading tracking apps like Storygraph, you can link them, and I assume the bibliologist will look over that and make sure they're not double recommending books. And with that, let's get started. Let's see how this goes. Right, what are my favourite genres? I really enjoy queer books, I guess just queer generally, or maybe I do queer/LGBTQ+. Just in case the bibliologist isn't sure what that means. I don't know. Mystery thrillers, psychological thrillers, and I do like contemporary books as well, which basically means books that are set in the here and now, like modern books with modern storylines. I'm not opposed to historical books, obviously, but by contemporary I'm more like, please don't recommend me stuff set on a different planet in a different time, because I'm just not into sci-fi or fantasy, just not my kind of vibe. Maybe let's go like lit fic as well, literary fiction. Is there anything I want to explore more of in my reading life? What do I want to explore more of? I did say in my last video, didn't I, that I was looking for recommendations for books that are sort of like emails or podcasts or like sort of like different medias in a book. I don't know really what's that called. Is it like epistolary or something? Epistolary. What's this epistolary? Yeah, that's correct. Epistolary novel refers to the work of fictions that are written in the form of letters or other documents. Right. I love to explore epistolary novels. Anything written in the form of emails, letters, podcasts, even anything that's not your standard novel. I'd actually love to explore more trans and non-binary characters because I do read a lot of queer fiction, obviously, but I always tend to go for like sapphic. Like when I'm in doubt, I'm just going to go for a sapphic novel. It's just who I am at heart. But I do really want to read more trans and non-binary characters. What else? I keep looking at my bookshelf for inspiration. Historical queer novels as well. Anything sort of like set in history. Okay. What are the last few books I really loved and why? Oh my god, there's been so many. Let me get on my Goodreads. I literally finished a book yesterday called That Green-Eyed Girl by Julie Owen Moylan, and it was so good. Talking of historical fiction, that is that. I'll talk about it properly in another video, but if you're intrigued, queer history, you should go read it. I think I'll just list here like my last five-star reads, I assume. That Green-Eyed Girl by Julie Owen Moylan. I'm just going to list the books first, and then I'm going to expand on why. Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. Oh my god, Sunburn was so good. I actually really want to film a video where I talk about all of my 5-star reads so far this year because I've got so many good ones I want to talk about. Those Who Wait by Hayley Cass as well. That was so good. It's really hard to talk and type. I'm really struggling with this. I did enjoy Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll, but it wasn't 5-star. A Scatter of Light by Melinda Lowe. That was awesome. And Ruby Fruit Jungle. Okay, now I'm just going to expand on why I love these. BRB. Okay, I had to keep it quite succinct because there is a character limit, which I didn't realise, so I had to remove A Scatter of Light from this list, which hurt my soul a little bit, but out of all of them, that was probably my least favourite. So That Green-Eyed Girl, I said I really enjoyed queer history from the last century, and I really enjoyed the dual timeline, trying to figure out all the links between the characters. Sunburn is just beautifully written, and just, I always enjoy a queer awakening. Like, I love that in a teenager, just like somebody coming to fruition, coming to realise who they are. Those Who Wait by Hayley Cass, why does it not say Cass? Is a contemporary romance, but every character was really fully fleshed out, so it wasn't just about their romance, it was about their lives outside of each other, and I really liked that. It was a 600-page book, which I read on my Kindle, and I didn't realise it was 600 pages when I downloaded it. Didn't feel like it. It was wonderful. And then finally, Ruby Fruit Jungle. I find classics really hard to get into, but despite this being from the 70s, it still felt very relatable to a modern reader. I might just add also really funny. Continue. How should your bibliologist balance books that fit your current style with picks that branch out? So mostly familiar, but an occasional stretch is okay. A mix of familiar and stretch reads, and expand my literary horizons. I think we'll stick in the middle. I don't really want to go into this knowing I'm going to get books that I might not enjoy at all. But also I don't want things that just like exactly like what I already read. So we'll go in with mix of familiar and stretch reads, and we'll see what comes out of it. It feels like the fairest way to do this. Am I looking for recommendations on a certain theme? Do I say I just want queer books because that is what this channel is about, and it might make it a better video if it's just queer books? I'm trying to read every queer book out there, so recommendations on that theme would be appreciated. I also love a really good mystery thriller, but because I've read so many in my time, it's hard to impress me. Anything else I want my bibliologist to know before they pick my books? What do I want my bibliologist to know? I'll tell you what, I'm also partial to a bit of non-fiction when it comes to queer history. Although I like to listen to my non-fiction books in audio form. Submit. Okay, I want to receive just the Rex. Why is it not doing anything? Am I gonna have to pay? Wait. Can I not just do it once? Am I gonna have to pay $18 every quarter? That was not clear. Okay. In the terms and conditions, it will renew automatically at the end of each term. If you sign up for a quarterly subscription, your subscription will automatically renew for an additional quarter unless you cancel through your account before your next billing date, which is 3 months from your prior billing date. So I think as long as I cancel it before the next quarter, we're all good. Okay, that wasn't made very clear. That was scary. I was scared. Okay, they've officially got my details. Congrats, we've got you on the books. I was wondering where to put my Goodreads link, and turns out it is right here. So I'm going to find my Goodreads link, put that in there, and then we'll have a look at the dashboard and we'll see. Just see what that looks like. For any of you wondering, my Goodreads is Georgia Marie XO, or if you put in Goodreads Georgia Marie on Google, it should be the first one that comes up, which is pretty cool. So if you go on your dashboard, you can update your TBR profile. So let's see what that means. Oh, this is really cool. So it's just like more questions that you can answer. So I've got all my other answers like all down here. But then at the top here, there's like further questions, which I might answer as well, just to really let them hone in, you know? What are my all-time favourite books and why? Oh my God, okay, right. 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Queer fiction with a hint of mystery. What else? Suddenly I can't remember any of my favourite books. Last Night at the Telegraph Club, of course. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. That'll probably do for that. Any books I absolutely hated? Guys, what books did I hate? I'm sure there are so many. Anything by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover Hate Club over here. Anybody else joining? The Power by Naomi Alderman. Hated that book. Find Me by Andre Asserman. God, I forgot how many books I hated. What else did I hate? What are a few of my favourite TV shows and movies? TV shows, Gossip Girl, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Dexter. Love Dexter. Oh my God, what are my favourite TV shows? I have so many. Grey's Anatomy. I feel like I should do 5 to like a good round number. I'll kick myself because I'll do this and I remember a TV show that I love but I've forgotten about. I know I love Orange is the New Black. Love, love, love. Films. Sweeney Todd. Love Sweeney Todd. La La Land. Basic Bitch. Pride and Prejudice. Oh my God. Oh, the latest movie I watched and loved was Love Lies Bleeding. I adored that. Any types of content I'd like my bibliologist to warn me about? Not really. I can do anything. What types of content are deal breakers? Your bibliologist will do their best to exclude books containing these. Requests to exclude books by or about specific marginalised communities, i.e. people of colour, LGBTQ+, etc. will not be honoured. Not into fantasy or sci-fi at all. Have no interest in reading them at this point in time. Like, I'm not saying I'm never ever going to read fantasy or sci-fi. Like, I'm sure there are like books in those genres out there that I will read and enjoy. But right now, I don't have the mental capacity, I don't have the want. I just want to pick up a book and know going in that there's a chance I'm going to enjoy it. Fantasy, all the world building, it's just not for me. All the words, the names, I just can't. I don't have the brain power right now, I'm not doing it. What are your preferred reading formats in list and order of preference? Print, ebook, audiobook, braille. Definitely print, number one. Audiobook, ebook. And then this is all just what I did. Oh, I actually feel like I might add anything else I want my bibliologist to know. I'm going to add not a fan of fantasy, too much world building and I lose interest, or sci-fi. Also wanting stand-alone books rather than a series. Simply don't have time for a series. Simply don't. Right, okay, so that is everything filled out for TBR. So I guess from here, we just wait. We just wait for them to send me recommendations. We'll see how long it takes. So it has been exactly 2 weeks to the day, and I woke up this morning with an email saying that my pigeon was ready with my tailored book recommendations, and I literally immediately did my makeup because I'm so impatient. I have to see what they've recommended straight away. Hopefully it's nothing that I've already read, but they did have access to my Goodreads, so I assume not. Should I screen record this? Maybe I should. Wait a sec. Okay, let's go. Recommendation letter. Hi Georgia, welcome to TBR. I had so much fun picking out these books for you. I've chosen 3 queer books that explore history in unusual ways. A short story collection, a poignant novel about friendship, and a thought-provoking historical. I hope these books are just what you're looking for and that they bring you all the reading joy in the coming months. Let's get to it. Okay, so they focus very much on the queer thing, which is what I wanted, and on the history thing as well. I wasn't really thinking all 3 were going to be about history, but no complaints, that is so fine by me. Very intrigued by a short story collection. The first one is Variations by Juliet Jacks. As soon as I read your survey, I knew I had to recommend this incredible book of short stories. It ticks so many of your boxes. The stories are told in a variety of unique formats: letters, emails, blog posts, a screenplay, interviews and oral histories, an academic paper. I did say that I love like epistolary novels, like books written in the form of letters or emails, stuff like that, so that's really fun. They take place all over the UK and across centuries from 1890s to the present day. They all feature queer and trans characters just trying to live their lives in a world that often does not want to let them be. It's hard to explain just how powerful this book is as a fictional exploration of queer history unlike any other I've ever read. I have never heard of this before. I've heard of so many queer books and I don't think I've ever seen any of these before. So let's have a look online and see how accessible these books are, because I'm worried they're going to be really expensive. Right, Variations by Juliet Jacks. Okay, that one is available on Amazon for just $9.19, so easy, fine, cool. Book number 2 is Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian by Hazel Jane Plant. You asked for books told in unusual formats as well as books with trans characters, so I'm hoping this will hit the spot. Intriguing. It's definitely not a standard novel by any means. It's written in the form of an encyclopedia about a fictional TV show, Little Blue. The narrator is a trans woman and her best friend Vivian has just died. She and Viv both loved Little Blue and the book is an ode to their friendship. The fictional world that Plant creates for this TV show is astounding, but what's even more amazing is the way she weaves so much life into this book. It's a novel about grief, trans sisterhood, friendship, love, pop culture and family. That sounds so interesting. Like the way they've just sold that to me, that sounds incredible. I love encyclopedias. Is that any surprise to anyone? Probably not. Let's see how easy it is to get hold of this one. Encyclopedia for Vivian. Okay, again, just $11.95 on Amazon. Sold, I'm doing it. Okay, and the final book is The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer. You asked for queer historical novels, and this is one of the best ones I've read in recent years. It also has a bit of a mysterious feel. It's not a thriller, but there is a lot of tension. It's set in 1920s Canada and takes place on a train. Baxter is a black queer sleeping car porter working a long train journey from Montreal to Vancouver. The working conditions for porters are horrendous, and as Baxter becomes more and more sleep deprived, it gets harder for him to tell the difference between reality and dream. It's a gorgeous, complicated meditation on consciousness and human nature, as well as a claustrophobic portrait of life for a black gay man in the 1920s. And honestly, all of those sound really, really interesting. I've never heard of any of them. Sorry, I'm just Googling to see how much this one is. Oh, this one is only available on Kindle, but that's so fine. I can order it on Kindle. Oh no, that's a lie. That's a lie. This app does not support purchasing of this content. It's not available on Kindle, but I can get the paperback for $9.99. Okay, cool, easy. I was really worried these books were going to be like so obscure that I wasn't going to be able to find them anywhere, and also this is an American site, and obviously I'm in the UK, so that was a concern, but we're all good. It also has the covers at the bottom, which is really cute. Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm really excited. Like, all three of these sound like something that I will most likely enjoy, which I'm really excited about. So I suppose I'm going to go order these books now, and I will come back to you once I've got them, or maybe once I've read the first one. We'll see. It's only been about 2.5 days since I filmed that last clip. I have already finished Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian by Hazel Jane Plant, or Plante. I don't really know how to pronounce her surname. I assume it's Plant. That's not that impressive a feat because this book is literally under 200 pages long. I think it was like 188 pages long. And lots of mixed feelings. I didn't love this, but I also really didn't hate it. This is a work of fiction that very much reads like non-fiction. Like, if you told me this was non-fiction, I would probably believe you. And it's got a really strange format. I've literally never ever read a book like this in my life. I probably will never read one like this again. In that this is a love letter written by our main character, our narrator. We do find out her name later in the book, but it is a bit of a spoiler, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But we'll just call her our narrator for the purpose of this video. So our narrator has lost one of their really, really good friends, the love of their life, and they don't really know how to process the grief. And so she's decided that her outlet is just going to be writing this encyclopedia for Vivian about Vivian's favourite TV show called Little Blue. And throughout this book you learn about what Little Blue was and about all the characters in it. And I do think the TV show angle was probably my biggest problem with this book, because I think if it was just the narrator and Vivian and about their love for Vivian and their grief over Vivian's death, I feel like I probably would have enjoyed this a lot more. I just couldn't get into the Little Blue Encyclopedia aspect of it, which obviously is quite a big part of the book because that's what it's called. So our narrator is a queer trans woman, whilst Vivian is a straight trans woman, and the narrator is completely head over heels in love with Vivian, calls her the love of her life. Only Vivian never really reciprocates those feelings. It's not really made clear whether Vivian knew that the narrator was in love with her. I assume that Vivian probably did know. And it's really interesting because whilst this is a love letter to Vivian, you as the reader, you can see all of her flaws. Like, she was a very flawed person. She was very like effervescent, a very vivacious kind of person, but also quite inherently selfish and did things for herself and didn't really care about other people at all. But like, the narrator knows that and you know that, but they still loved Vivian for who she was. And so in trying to express her love for Vivian, she decides to write an encyclopedia about Little Blue. Little Blue is a TV show. I think it's kind of like Twin Peaks style. I've never seen Twin Peaks, but I did some Googling because I was very confused. Like, I literally wasn't sure if Little Blue was a real TV show or not. Like, that is how like non-fiction this book reads. And it gives me very like kind of uncanny valley vibes, and it's like very absurd. I hate absurd TV shows. I hate like sketch comedies. I hate where you got like weird characters, like quirky characters. Anything that's like slightly uncanny valley makes me like deeply uncomfortable to my core. And that is a very personal like me problem, but I do think that is the problem I had with this book, because Little Blue is so uncanny valley. And through each chapter you're learning about all these different characters in Little Blue, and again, it's very absurdist. None of the characters really like have much to do with each other. There's not really much of a storyline running between the characters. There's only 10 episodes of this TV show, that is it. And there are some characters you're learning about who literally came into this TV show for all of like one scene and they were never seen again, but you were being told about them in detail in this book. So each chapter begins with an illustration and a G, and a letter. This is G. And so you learn first about like Grady Goodwin, and then it tells you about who Grady Goodwin is in Little Blue, and then you learn about some of the other characters. Like, you got like, this is the list of songs because Viv made the narrator a playlist about her favourite like Britpop songs. So each chapter very much starts with like a synopsis of who the character was in Little Blue, and then it kind of divulges into how that character links to Vivian, how the narrator sort of thinks of Vivian through this character, and it sort of like talks about that for a bit, and then a few pages later you learn about the next character, and then it sort of goes into another little story about like the narrator and Vivian. And it's a really interesting concept, and I do think the people who love this book will probably really, really love it. There was just something about Little Blue and the whole like description of the TV show that made me so deeply uncomfortable. I can't put it into words. I just did not enjoy it, did not like it, but I loved learning about the narrator and Vivian and their relationship, and about like who these people were or who these people are as characters. I was kind of waiting throughout the book for the characters for Little Blue to have like something more to do with the story. I was waiting for them to kind of like maybe like converge, and they just never really did. Like, it's two completely separate things but also like very linked. I don't know. Is this making any sense? This book was wild, and I've never read anything like it in my life, and I wouldn't necessarily say don't read it based on my opinion, because I think there definitely is a place for this. I think the look into like queerness and transness was so important. Like, it was so deeply queer and so unapologetically trans. Actually, no, I wouldn't say that. I'd say Vivian was a very unapologetic trans woman, whereas the narrator clearly has some issues with their transness that they're still trying to overcome, but Vivian was like helping them, and I think that was a big part of the love there. Yeah, I didn't not enjoy it, but also I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars, middle of the road. I do also think it's a very poignant story about grief and how sort of different people process their grief in different ways, and I think if you are grieving somebody, this will either be like too raw, or it will just be like exactly what you need to help you get through it. Could go either way. You gotta try. So that was my first book out of the 3 recommendations so far, and whilst I wouldn't say it was a complete hit, it also wasn't a miss. Like, I see where the recommender was going with this one. Like, it encapsulates everything I said I wanted. It had queerness. I said I wanted to read more about trans characters. I said I like books in a slightly different format, and it very much, it matches all of those things. It just wasn't personally for me, but it might be for you. It is so dark and stormy and rainy outside, and I'm not even mad about it because it means autumn's coming. It's just my favourite time of year. Like, Holly said to me, my fiance, my wife, we got married at the weekend. That's wild. Holly said to me yesterday, she's like, are you ready for autumn? Like, it's your time to shine. And I was like, yes, bitch, I am ready. So all of that to say, if the lighting in this is a bit dodgy, that's why. But we're cosy up in here. I spent all morning reading, finishing one of the books for this video, and I have some thoughts. I also bought a new chair for my office so we can like sit in the corner when we talk about books, and it's going to be nice and cozy. Look, I am wearing shorts, by the way, I promise. Anyway, I've got 2 books to update you on. I wanted to like film my review separately for all 3. Wedding life got in the way, so I'm coming at you with reviews of both of the final books in this video. And spoiler alert, I'm very meh, kind of, about all the books that have been recommended to me, but hear me out. First up, I want to talk to you about The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer, and I realised I was just editing the rest of the video for this, and I realised I was putting the emphasis on like the sleeping car porter, but it's not, it's the sleeping car porter, because it's a sleeping car on a train. This is a very short and sweet book, and honestly, thank God this book is short and sweet, because I think if it was any longer, I probably would have given up on it. Should I put my phone on Do Not Disturb? Probably should do that. This book is kind of the definition of very fascinating premise, but very dull execution. And I say that as somebody who is very, very much a plot girly. Like, I need my plot to push me through a book. Like, really deep character studies, I'm just not really there. And this, I would say, more errs on the side of character study. But even then, you're kind of left wanting a lot of the time because of just the general premise of the book. You never really get to know any of the characters apart from the narrator Baxter all that well. So this book is about, as I said, the narrator here, Baxter, and he is a sleeping car porter in Canada, and he basically works on this Trans-Canada train that runs from like coast to coast, and it's like meant to be like a 3-day long train or something, so people get on it and obviously sleep in the sleeping car. Baxter is a gay black man living in Canada, and I think this book was set around the 1920s, and his entire life is basically working in this sleeping car because he is saving up to go to dental school. That is his like entire ambition in life. He wants to go to dental school, and he's only got about like $100 left to go until he can afford his tuition. So he's been working on this car for years, or on this train for years and years and years, and he's like on the final stretch. Only he is also kind of on the final stretch to being fired as well. Apparently with this company you get something called demerits, and if you have a certain number of demerits you are automatically fired, you leave the company, and that is that. And being a black man in Canada at this time, he would struggle to find a job elsewhere. So like he needs to make this job work, and he needs to get through, get his money and get to dental school, and that is all that he is, like one track mind. I'm sure there's a pun I could make there relating to tracks and trains, but I'm a little bit ill, you might be able to hear. So in this book you're just following Baxter as he works on this train as a porter, and he has to deal with some very interesting characters. A lot of people who believe they are very much above him because he's a black man. Nobody knows he's gay because it was very much illegal to be gay in Canada at this time. But everyone just treats him as this lowly black porter there to wait on them hand and foot, and so he isn't really given any respect. And he also doesn't really get much sleep either, and throughout the course of this book you kind of see him descend into, I'm not going to say madness, but maybe delirium. Like he is so deeply tired because about 2 days into this trip the train is actually stopped on the tracks thanks to a mudslide, and so this, what was meant to be like a 3-day trip, turns into like a 5 or 6 day trip, and everyone's starting to go like a little bit doolally, stuck on this train, and Baxter has just got to continue to work with no sleep. Like he can't sleep, he is a sleeping car porter, like he needs to be there at everyone's beck and call. And anyway, I found this really interesting to read over the last couple of weeks because I've also been deliriously tired myself. We've been planning a wedding, it's just been a lot. I've been working alongside that, like trying to make it so I could take a week off after the wedding, and obviously when you're self-employed you need to like get ahead of yourself so you can afford to take that time off. Also been going through some like personal stuff in our family, so I've been tired, burnt out, just plain exhausted. And at one point I was reading this in the bath and I was literally like trying to read it and my eyes were going at the same time that Baxter's also like trying to work, his eyes are going, and I was like, this seems correct, it seems right. But even that like tiny bit of relatability really couldn't save this book for me because I just found there was no plot, but also every time you sort of got to know a character they would move on, and you never really got to know any of the characters all that deeply. Even like Baxter himself, you don't really get to know him that much because all he's doing is working. All you really know about Baxter is that he's gay and he really likes teeth. If teeth weird you out and detailed descriptions of teeth and dentistry weird you out, this book is not for you. It was like really quite intense at some points. But this whole book just felt very fleeting. I think because of the nature of being a sleeping car porter, Baxter would only get to hear like snippets of conversations and see snippets of interactions. So every time something kind of like interesting came up in the plot, Baxter would have to move on and go and like tend to the next guest, and because you're seeing it through his eyes, like it's his narration, you never like really get to like the crux, like the juice of a storyline. You just get to see like snippets and bits and bobs. And there is like one kind of heartwarming bit where one of the children, like a girl, is travelling across the country with her grandma because her mum's died and her grandma's handing her over to her father and her father's side of the family. And this girl has clearly gone through a lot and she like gets really attached to Baxter. And so she just follows Baxter around. He has to take her around whilst he's working. But he's just so deliriously tired, and because he's just a lowly porter, like he's just got to accept this girl is with him all the time. And it is really heartwarming that she takes such a shine to him. I think it's meant to be maybe a discussion around how all the adults treat him badly because they just see him as black and a porter, and so he's kind of like dismissed and not treated with any respect. Whereas this little girl, Esme, she doesn't see any of that. She just sees somebody that she deems to be her friend and wants to spend all of her time with him. Also, he can't really spend that much time with her because he's working, but also he has to because she's a customer. It's very layered like that. I did like that sort of like small aspect of the book, but generally I just found it slow paced and just a bit boring. Baxter is a gay man, and I did find the queer aspects of this story quite interesting, but again they are quite fleeting. You never really get to like the crux of it. It talks about some of Baxter's like sexual experiences, but it doesn't really go much deeper than that, and I just feel like that sums up this book perfectly. Like, he's gay, but that just feels like incidental to the story, whereas I was kind of more interested in wanting like queer stories, if that makes sense. And what else have I written in my notes? Oh yeah, really importantly is that Suzette Mayer clearly did her research before writing this book. Like, she knew her character inside and out. She knew what it was to be a black gay sleeping car porter in the 1920s, and that just absolutely leaps off these pages. But I did find there were some points where I was maybe missing a bit of context. I don't know if it comes from obviously not being Canadian or not living in this time, although it was 100 years ago now, so not many people would have been living, or no, they would have been living in that time, but they wouldn't still be living now. I do feel like sometimes with historical fiction, you could do like some footnotes to maybe describe in a little bit more detail what's going on, or just provide some historical context. Like in Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which is one of my favourite books ever about being queer or being lesbian in San Francisco in the 1950s, I think it was. There's a whole portion at the back of the book which talks like in more depth about the history, like the real life history behind all the different things that are referenced. And I feel like I could have done with something like this, like that in this book, but maybe that's just me speaking as a complete nerd. Like, that's a very nerdy thing to want to know properly, but I am very much somebody who just has to know everything about everything all the time. I need to know all the context. I need to know, like, I found myself actually Googling at certain points in this book to try and get a bit more context behind what was going on. I would not say this was a bad book at all. Like, I don't think this was bad. I just think it wasn't quite for me. Like, it has won awards. Winner of the Scotiabank Giller Prize, apparently. I've never heard of that award before, but it won it. It literally has like incredible reviews on the back. I just don't think this particular style of book was for me. And the final book that got recommended to me is Variations by Juliet Jacks. Just look at this cover. I adore this cover so much. Juliet Jacks is a trans woman herself, and this is a collection of I think about 11 short stories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 11 short stories that take you through history of trans people in the UK, like in the UK specifically. And I think the first story starts in like the mid 1840s or early 1800s maybe, and then it goes all the way through to like modern day. I think the last story is set around like 2014. So you really do see a good snippet of history in this book. Because of course, despite the moral panic the media seems to be pushing about transness and trans people nowadays, trans people have always been around, like they've always been there. Maybe they're a bit more visible today, but trans people have always existed, the same as gay people have always existed, and lesbians have always existed. Like, we've always been here, history has just covered it up. Again, this is another book with a really fascinating premise. Like I said, it's 11 short stories throughout the last 200 years in the UK about transness. And I do think one of the curses of short stories, especially when they're like put together in an anthology like this, would that be an anthology? When a load of short stories are put in a book together, you're always going to have some which are really good and you're going to have some that are really bad. And what I found a struggle in this book is the ones that I didn't like seem to be all in the first half of this, and then the second half was actually amazing. But again, it's so personal. Like, you might enjoy the short stories that I didn't like, and you might hate the ones that I did like. So I wouldn't take that as me saying, don't read this book, because I think there is something for everyone. Juliet Jacks is a truly incredible writer. Like, I got halfway through this and had to actually go and Google to make sure that this was fiction and not non-fiction, because it reads so real. And that's kind of what it's supposed to be, but Juliet is writing in so many different formats in this book. I wrote them all down. You've got newspaper articles, you've got academic papers, blog posts, transcripts, interviews. Like, she writes in all these sort of like different ways in this book, and each short story is kind of in a different format. And Juliet is basically inspired by maybe a newspaper article that she found from the 1840s, and then she's riffed off of that and has made up a story in her head based off of one newspaper article. Or she's read a blog post and has then riffed off of the blog post and created her own story from that. Or she's gone to a museum and found something in the queer archives, and then she's riffed off of that and written a story about that thing. But it literally all feels so real. It's truly, truly incredible writing. Like, she's clearly an incredibly skilled writer. Like, to be able to write in so many different mediums and to be able to do it so convincingly in every single one, like, it's incredible. She does cover a variety of trans lives and trans experiences in this book. I will say I felt like she focused a lot more on the experiences of trans women than trans men. There were only 2 short stories, I think, in this that featured trans men rather than trans women as like the main character. But that's probably understandable, being a trans woman herself, like she is writing from her own experience. She also really focuses on all the big historical events in the UK over those 200 years, like the decriminalisation of homosexuality, Section 28, it mentions lesbians and gay support the minors. So like, as a massive queer history nerd, this like really ticked a lot of boxes for me. Again, some of the stories I enjoyed a lot more than others. Some of them I really, really did not like at all and found myself kind of skim reading them. One of my favourite stories in this is called The Exhibition, and it's about a trans man who contacts this like curiosity show up in Blackpool and basically offers to put himself on display for the public to just come and like gawk at, because he wants people to understand that he is just a normal person like everyone else, and why can't he earn some money whilst he's doing so? Like, everyone treats him as a freak and a curiosity anyway, so why not make some money off of it? So it sort of talks about his time in the exhibition and how that goes. There's also the twist. This says, this script was submitted unsolicited to Sunrise, a British independent film company, in 2015, 20 years after the events that it depicts. It's not real. This is all fiction, but like, it's got these like tiny little blurbs at the beginning of each story which makes you think it's real. And this is about a trans woman who's basically made this film about transness and trans life, and about one of her friends, another trans woman, who died of, I think it was AIDS. Am I mistaken that? I'm pretty sure she died of AIDS, and it's just about like their life and how they got to that point, and I thought that was so good. So it really does have some fantastic stories in it. I just very much skim read a lot of it. Also, again, there were quite a few references in this that went over my head, and I am somebody who, like, I know my queer history quite well. I probably don't know trans history as well as I'd know, like, gay and lesbian history, which is why I want to read more trans fiction and more trans non-fiction as well. Again, I feel like it could have benefited from some footnotes or from, like, a few pages at the back of the book where you could go and, like, figure out the references and see the historical context as to what was going on. Again, like with the sleeping car porter, that is probably just me being a massive nerd. Like, there were certain historical points and people referenced I had never heard of, so I ended up having to like stop and Google things. And because this is so like fiction slash non-fiction, I didn't know if these like characters or names they're bringing up were real or not real, and I found myself like having to take myself out of the story a lot to like Google. Again, that's probably a me thing. I don't even know if I can rate this book, to be honest, because I really enjoyed some of it, I really didn't enjoy other bits of it. I think it's a really interesting read, but I would say if you're just like reading a short story and you're bored of it, just move on to the next one. Like, I feel like that is probably one of the best things about short story collections, and I wish I'd done that, but I felt like I had to like read it in full to be able to give you guys a proper, well-rounded review. So there. So yeah, I wouldn't really say there was an outright winner of any of these 3 books. I didn't really love any of them, but I also didn't downright hate them. My least favourite was probably Little Blue Encyclopedia, then maybe The Sleeping Car Porter, and then Variations. This was probably my favourite of the lot because when I did find it compelling, I found it really compelling. But I didn't love any of them, and you know what? It's made me want to try it again, so I think I'm going to go back onto my TBR sort of like dashboard, and I'm going to put in my thoughts and my opinions on these books, and then what happens is the same person, the same bibliologist, makes recommendations for a second round, and we can see if maybe they can improve on their recommendations based on what I thought about this. So if you'd like to see a second part of this video, do let me know, because I'm going to make one anyway. Let's be honest, I'm going to make one anyway. Maybe me and my bibliologist can get to a point where she knows me so well that she can just like recommend banger after banger after banger. That'd be amazing. But let's see how round 2 goes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you found this video interesting because I've really enjoyed filming this one. If you know of any other services like TBR online or in person or anything like that, please do let me know, because I feel like this could be a really interesting avenue to explore and see what other recommendations I can come up with. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new around here, if you've never watched any of my videos before, then make sure you click that subscribe button down below and you can come on this journey with me as I try to read every queer book in existence. I read other books as well, but I read a lot of queer fiction and I'm on a mission to do it all, which is impossible, but I'm going to do it anyway. Thanks for watching and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!